play right, cause they can't miss. All about the game, that's a Colts wish. Serving up the truth, call it ruthless. Tune in and get your fix from Blake and Vish Sports.
Both of us only had one team from the AFC South in. You had Indianapolis, I had Tennessee. I think we should debate that real quick, why you think Indianapolis wins that division and not Tennessee.
Yeah, that's a good one. So for me, the Titans, I'm just not the biggest fan of them, to be honest with you. I know they have Henry. I know they have Julio and A.J. Brown, and that's all great. Tannehill's an incredibly underrated quarterback. I agree with all of that, but this defense to me is still just not where it needs to be. I know they brought in Bud Dupree, but I think he benefited a lot from having just 3 elite D linemen around him. D'Amico Autry was a good signing, though. I really like that. And then still their secondary, they lost a few guys. Adoree Jackson, they lost Vaccaro, and then they lost another starting corner. Now I know they drafted Farley, they got Janoris Jenkins, but that still to me is kind of big. And then I know they have Julio, but they still did lose Jonnu Smith and some other guys. So just overall, I'm just not I don't think they really got that much better. And this defense is still just tough for me. Like I just cannot have faith in this defense, and that is something that the Colts do have. They have a really good defense. They have Buckner. Offense-wise, really, really good O-line, which I'm a fan of. Jonathan Taylor's solid. And I'm somewhat of a Carson Wentz truther. I'm not, saying he's going to be a top 10 quarterback, but I think he can do what Phillip Rivers did and then some. Because Phillip Rivers last year, his arm was shot. I think his arm was really shot, and you could see that in the Bills game. And if they had another quarterback, and that's in a lot because the Bills made it to the AFC Championship game, and that game was just really close overall. So I think the Colts are one of the underrated teams this offseason, and I'm putting them as in the playoffs above the Titans for the AFC South.
So I agree with you on the Tennessee Titans. I think their defense is a question mark. The thing for me is that their defense was terrible last year. And they were able to overcome it. And I think that getting Taylor Lewan back is going to add to their strength. I think their offense, to me, even losing Arthur Smith, having him or not, it's a really tough offense to stop when you have such an accurate and tough down-the-field passer in Ryan Tannehill to go with their bruising-style run game with Derrick Henry, and then you have 2 elite receivers on the outside in A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. And I know Jonnu Smith's going to hurt, Corey Davis is going to hurt, but you add Julio Jones, and I think he makes up for Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis a little bit. And then you look at their defense, and to me, Adoree Jackson, Janoris Jenkins, Adoree Jackson's probably better. He's younger than Janoris Jenkins, but I thought Janoris Jenkins had a hell of a season last season for the Saints, so I thought that was a good signing. I'm with you on Bud Dupree, but I think Jeffrey Simmons, who was outstanding last year,
really great.
Another step this year, and he gets even better. And I think Tennessee's defense, it's going to be a bottom 12 defense in the NFL again. I just think their offense will once again carry them. And the reason I'm down on the Colts is because I feel like they've had a couple of kind of big losses that we're underrating. Starting off with the retirement of Anthony Costanzo. To me, Eric Fisher coming off the Achilles, I didn't think he was playing that great football as a left tackle the last 3-4 years, even without an Achilles injury. I'm not sure about him coming off the Achilles. I know they drafted, I think it's Sam Cosmi that they drafted. They drafted Sam Cosmi. I'm not sure about that. So that's one thing. 2, the quarterback situation. Carson Wentz was mostly terrible last season. Let's just say it how it was. He was not good. Whether he bounces back now that he's injured, I don't know. Starting Jacob Eason, to me, that's risky. I know he looked pretty good in preseason, but I think that's risky. So I have a question at left tackle. Then the receivers on the whole, T.Y. Hilton's on IR. Paris Campbell hasn't really panned out. I'm a big Michael Pittman fan, but I feel like there's just a lack of explosion across their offense. And that to me is a problem because that's what Carson Wentz didn't have in Philly. They had no explosive element to their offense. Now Jonathan Taylor is explosive, but they don't have a down the field vertical threat. So I have questions like that in their offense. Then their defense, right? Their defense, on paper is fantastic. Darius Leonard's good. DeForest Buckner's incredible. And then their secondary's got a lot of underrated players who fit their specific scheme. Like Xavier Rhodes refound himself and reemerged and played really good football, playing a lot of cover 2 with them last year. Kenny Moore is a really underrated and good free safety, or excuse me, nickel. Julian Blackmon, who I also meant to mention, is the underrated free safety and a solid player overall. So they have a lot of good elements to their defense. It's just not a defense that can carry a football team, in my opinion. And I have a feeling they might have to, even though Frank Reich's an excellent play caller, because I think there's questions at quarterback. I think the offensive line, Quentin Nelson is hurt. I don't know how long he's out. Excuse me, I should have.
It might be a few weeks, but I know Carson Wentz is on track to play week 1 too, which is kind of big.
So Quentin Nelson did return to practice, right, recently. I think he's going to play week 1, but him just being injured this offseason, I just think, I'm not saying it's a point of concern. I more mentioned it as to say just they have players who have been kind of in and out. They've had a little bit of an injury bug this offseason with Wentz, Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson. And then the final thing to me is I thought the loss of Justin Houston was huge. He had 8 sacks. He was a real edge rush presence. I know that they drafted Kwity Paye, and Kwity Paye is a similar type player, not the same type player, but he offers a similar skill set from Michigan as an edge rusher. I don't know if he will be that for them year 1. And so I think they miss explosion off the edge, and that's big. And because of that, I just look at their team and I say they're solid in a lot of great areas. But I don't look at those 1 or 2 things that's going to put them over the top and make them consistently beat these higher level teams in the AFC. You have to have something in your offense that's explosive. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just Taylor. Maybe he can pop off an 80-yard run from time to time. Maybe it's that, and maybe I'm not seeing it. And then their defense, I just think there's question marks. I personally think Darius Leonard is a tad overrated when we're talking about the best linebackers. I think he struggles a little bit more in coverage. The stats won't bear it out. But if you really go back and watch and what he's asked to do at times, he's not the player in coverage that a Fred Warner or an Eric Kendricks or those kind of players are. So I think he's just a hair overrated because of that. But I just think overall, I just have questions like that about the Colts. And I just look at Tennessee and I say that offense will continue to win them football games. I see the Colts and I say they have a better overall roster. I don't know philosophically how they'll win games.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess the main thing with the Titans that would make you want to put them over the Colts is just the fact that you know what you're getting with that offense. And that offense was a top 5 unit last year. I don't see them regressing to anything less than that, especially with Julio. The only thing that could is if Julio got injured, but I think that whole thing is really overstated. Yes, he's questionable every week. Yes, he doesn't practice and hasn't for the last 4 years. Last year was really the only year he's missed significant time. So I really do think he'll be back. And upgrading at receiver from Corey Davis to Julio Jones is really not talked about as much as it should be. I know it gets talked about a lot, but that difference is alarming because Julio healthy is still a top 5 wide receiver in the whole NFL. And then you add A.J. Brown, who's emerging as a top 10 receiver or could already be there. I don't know. That offense is going to be really, really, really good.
Yeah. And real quick, let's just touch on our final 3 teams